My loves, hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritual Boujee Astrology, and we are going to take a look at the astrological transits of April 2026, all the major transits of April. Now, before we get into all of that, I want to let everybody know this week in particular, this first week of April, I have three episodes that are going to come out just a few days apart. The weekly episode, which is already out, this monthly episode, which I'm going to schedule out for Monday afternoon, and then the day of April 1st is the full moon in Libra, and I want to be in the full moon energy when I do the full moon in Libra episode. So on that day, I will actually show you guys the part of the website, letting you know exactly what the special is. There is going to be a special, but I am not showing you on this particular episode because, again, it's going to go out before April 1st, but it's going to be on the 1 hour session. So just everybody is aware. There's a lot of the vibration whenever it comes to what we're going into next. I want to be in the moment so that way I can define it very clearly for you guys. Because sometimes whenever I'm foreshadowing a lot of things before we're actually in it, it doesn't always make sense to each one of us. And then we have to make some additional connections, which is fine. That's why I do weekly episodes on top of the monthly episode. But when it comes to this month, the biggest thing that I can say is we're going to go into some very fast moving energy. And I've said this for a while. And a lot of it, I want to be in it whenever we start talking about it. Now, the thing about this month that I am so thrilled about, the biggest of them, is for the entire month of April, not a single planet is retrograde, not one, not none of them. They're all direct, okay? Whether we're talking about Pluto over in Aquarius, everything that's going on in Aries, going into Taurus, going into Cancer, every planet is direct. Now, last year, we only had a window of all the planets being direct for roughly about 2-3 weeks. And then we went into the first set of retrograde planets, and that started with Pluto. And the thing is, that means that it's really hard to get forward momentum. But we had a lot of glimpses of what we would be focusing on in 2026 in 2025. A lot of glimpses that we were going into something new, that we needed to do something new. Now, some people, they still had disruptions to deal with because 2025 was a 9 year. And there was so much about the year. It's like, hey, we got to close some things out. But we had glimpses last summer as to why the closeout was necessary. And the last part of 2025 was a lot of cleansing and clearing. Whenever we got into 2026, especially January into February, we started to connect to some new. But even before we can fully implement the new, there's been this little lasting vibration of things not going to plan or little bits of setback through the month of March. And I am blaming Mercury retrograde for that. It brought up a lot of unresolved, unfinished business, letting us know some things that were holding us back that we didn't realize were holding us back. For some of you, that was present people making you see them in a different light. For some of you, it was old wounds that go all the way back to the past that you didn't realize were still an issue, that it was still impacting the way you were making decisions today. There was an injured part of our ego, so to speak, some part of the inner child work that still needed to get worked through. And as we're going into this first little bit of April, what I said before was that we have this bigger new while also still kind of settling out some of the old simultaneously. Now, for some people, that last week and a half of March, you did do some settling out. Right after Mercury turned direct, you started to settle some things out. And for some of you, it even comes into parts of April. But if we have some of the old stuff there, I really feel like a lot of it, the stuff that we can clear, just to be clear, the stuff that we are allowed to clear, that we can finally clear, that we are ready to clear out, will pretty much dwindle out through the first little bit of April. And then we're going to really hone in on a lot of new energy. And I want people to think back to what you have been trying to do since last summer. What were the ideas? What have been the plans? What has been the pull in the energy, this new little direction, this new plan, this new concept? Where have we been focused on? What have we been thinking about? What have we been manifesting? Because so much of this month has momentum beyond just the fact that there's no planets retrograde. And it speaks to picking up on the things that we were trying to do last year, or we got a glimpse of last year, and actually being able to move forward with them this time. There's so much new to the month of April. And for a lot of us, this new does tie back to last summer when we were doing the pinky toe dips into the water for new signs. Now, there's more than one reason why there's forward momentum where we felt stuck in a lot of ways since about mid-February. And that's because we're going to also have some additional luminaries finally moving again. So right around the time frame between February 14th and February 20th, two luminaries, I'm saying luminaries and not just planets, they got stuck. And I want to talk about that part. Pluto got to 15 degrees of Cancer and started to station retrograde. This happened right around that Valentine's Day time span. Simultaneously, the nodes reached 8 degrees of Virgo and Pisces, and they too have been stuck in the same area of the sky. And as we get into April, both of them start to move. Now, right at the beginning of the month, Jupiter is going to start moving. The nodes will start moving more towards the middle of the month when a lot of the other big Aries energy starts to kick off. But there is still areas of, again, the past coming back through, connecting again, and finally being able to move into something. And this takes me to a really specific transit that's coming through right towards the second half of the month. So not quite the end, but a little bit past the middle. And this has to do with the Venus-Uranus conjunction. And it's the second one. The Venus-Uranus conjunction that is going to be happening happens at the exact same place that it did last year, most specifically July 4th weekend. And I said this then, there's stuff that we're starting to see over the summer, the glimpses of the summer. They're giving us hope, they're giving us direction, but we will not be fully able to step into the new direction until 2025. Now we can finally step into 2026, sorry, until 2026. And now we can finally step into a lot of the new. And there is stuff, most specifically from last summer, that we are now going to be able to sink our teeth into, especially in the month of April. We're going to start moving forward and progressing into something. And the entire month of April has progress to it. And this is why I'm saying if you have nothing but forward momentum, direction, path, all gas, no brakes, nothing stopping you, nothing dwindling. Yes, we can still have some things from the past come up, but they're not meant to be roadblocks. They're meant to be a part of the progress, or they're that last little bit of things that we need to square out and leave behind, one of the two. That leaves for a lot of room for growth, for potential. This entire month is all gas, no brake. That's amazing. And once we get into the second half of the month, it's going to be even more mentally busy. So not just physical busyness, but mentally busy. Planning, communication, the things that are rolling out, the things that are pulling through. There's a reason only so much new was coming through in the first part of the year, that being January and that little bit of February, because all of it was still glimpses of stuff that would be rolling out deeper and further once we got into April. And now we're in April. Now, we got a couple things going on this month. One, besides that Venus, Uranus, and stuff I've already talked about, one that we really need to focus in on that has brought us to this point is the Mercury-Mars conjunctions. Now, we started dealing with the Mercury-Mars conjunctions in October. I have literally had this one little note piece on my desk that has had all the dates of just the Mercury-Mars. I don't even know if you guys can see that, by the way. I think it's got too much light on it. Okay. Reminding us, each of these series of dates connects to the next one Each one has a certain direction. Each one is connected in different ways. The first, the third, and the fifth are connected. We're going into the fifth one now. The second and the fourth were connected because of the Mercury retrogrades. We are done with those. And there are certain things that started to come together even last year. And it was most specifically the time frame that I said you need to do the opposite. If you do the opposite, this was back in October, mainly October. I was still kind of saying it November and December, but mainly October, you need to do the opposite. If you would normally give a bunch of energy to certain people, do not give it this time. If you would normally act a certain way, it is time to walk away as opposed to acting. You needed to do the opposite because this was going to protect you and keep you from dealing with the same old wounds. It was going to keep you from reopening, rehashing wounds, or it was going to keep you from repeating a pattern that resulted in a wound. And for a lot of you, you're going to remember that and be like, oh yeah, I was able to figure out what the opposite was, or big or here. You didn't figure out what the opposite it was. And little bits of that energy has been following you all the way through. Everyone's in different places. Everyone had different kinds of decisions to make. Everyone had different kind of wounds to deal with. But there is something about that time frame, most specific around that October 19th, 20th time frame, but we can really round it out from like the 15th to the 25th of October. That time frame was directly connected to January time frame. The transit I'm referring to with Mercury Mars was most exact around the 17th and the 18th of January, but really we can give a bigger window there of between the 15th and the 22nd, in my opinion. And then now, this month, April 19th and 20th, the most exact, we go into our fifth and final Mercury-Mars conjunction. Now, the reason I have said these are all connected is because of how they started, that third one and where it was, and how this series of transits is going to end this month. The first Mercury-Mars conjunction, again back in October, was in a Mars-ruled sign. It happened in Scorpio. The second one, the one that happened in January, the third one, but the second one we're focused on. The third one happened in Capricorn, which is a Saturn-ruled sign. Now this fifth and final one, the one that is connected to all of the previous ones, is once again in a Mars-ruled sign because it's happening in Aries, and it's in a conjunction to Saturn. So there's something very, very heavy that is meant to impact our lives, a set of rules and responsibilities, judgment roles that we've been stepping into that now have a further round of action and rollout that is going to directly impact the rest of the year. Because what are we going to be dealing with at the end of the year? We're going to be dealing with tests. I've already warned of this. Fourth quarter of 2026 and first quarter of 2027 are tests. And I specifically started to warn about how heavy all of this time frame is back in February when I did the meditative rant about the 2026, 2027 eclipses and how they're connected together. And this Saturn part to the Mars-Mercury conjunctions. I have said this in detail before, and I'm not going to rehash all of it right now, but it still comes down to we're in a very big month that is months in the making time frame. Once certain things come together, they get decided on, they roll out, actions are taken, disruptions are had because it's still Mars, the god of war, making a conjunction to good old daddy Saturn in Aries, which is a very activated Mars ruled sign. Reactive, that's what I mean to say, reactive Mars ruled sign. So we have the Saturn, Mars, Mercury conjunction right as Uranus is about to go into Gemini. It's setting the stage for a new focus. And again, we had glimpses of this once before. We did not realize the full elements of the connection, and I understand that. But we have had glimpses, we have had warnings, we have had something coming through, whether we're talking about in the collective, because that's one mentality, or in our individual senses, that's another part of it. We've had a whole slew of things that have rounded into a buildup into what we will be dealing with this month. It is a very big month. Now, the first part of the month is actually more full of internalized, behind the scenes acceptance levels of transits that do not have big energy per se. They can feel big for you, but not necessarily that they're explosive, taking over the world types of energy. That comes more at the end of the month, based off of Uranus going into Gemini, based off of the Saturn, Mercury, Mars triple conjunction, closing out the series of 5. But remember, that conjunction is also going to include Saturn going into shadow. So whatever we're committing to in April, we come back to at the end of the year when Saturn comes back to that area of the skies. So again, we're in a really, really, really big month. I don't know how else to say that. Now, the reason I'm saying at the beginning of the month, we have this slew of internalized energies, and this will be the last thing I explain and then we'll go into transits, is the fact that we're going to have a series of big contra-antisias of Mars and Mercury to what's going on in Aries. Now, I want to be clear. We have had prior contra-antisias. And if you are not familiar with our contra-anticia, I'll explain it here in just a second. But these are not clear transits. These are mathematical transits. You actually have to know how the charts work, how they lay on top of each other, how the layering and everything works, who's in a higher authority and who has more to do, who's more in the idea of taking direction and who's giving the direction. Now, in this particular sense, we're going to have a lot of contra-antisias right at the first of the month that give foreshadowing to what we will be committing to, what we will be acting upon closer to the end of the month. And for a lot of people, again, we go into this first week of April, there's going to be a little bit of cleansing, clearing, letting some things go, final elements of the past and working through some old emotions, because Mercury will still be in shadow during that time. But then after we get through like that first 4 or 5 days of the month, then it goes into like having some really interesting conversations as to what we're accepting. It's like we walk through a gateway. That's why the weekly episode was called a gateway. The door opens, a gateway, something unlocks, something unfurls in some type of way, an unwrapping of sorts. And then we can start moving with that vibration. It's either moving with that or moving past that, depending on your individual situation. And really honing in, focusing in on something new, some new level of direction, new roles, new responsibilities, new actions, new reactions. And this again is going to be a very fast moving month. And there's going to be a lot of big things that happen. But it's kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning of the year in January. It was like, hey, we got a lot of big things coming in January. And most people were like, oh, okay. Until we got to the month, like, oh my God, there's so much that just happened. I'm like, that's what I said would happen. That's what was supposed to happen. So we're going to get to the end of April and everybody's going to be like, oh my God, so much stuff just happened. I know, because that's what I said was going to happen. All right, let me show you the visual of a contra-anticia. So our charts are in a circle. You can see this. Dusty is not an artist. You just deal with the fact that I did this. Okay. A conjunction would be when two planets are on top of each other. We've seen plenty of conjunctions. That's easy enough. Contra-anticias are whenever we fold the chart specifically at the cardinal starting lines. That would be your solstice lines and your equinox lines. Whenever we fold the chart at either the start of Aries, the start of Cancer, the start of Libra, or the start of Capricorn, we can lay two signs on top of each other. Now, the only way you can reach a contra-anticia is if the mathematical number between the planet in Pisces, and in this case, the planet in Aries, totals up to 30. This is what is known as a contra-anticia or a secret conjunction, a hidden conjunction. And the way this tends to manifest is that there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes, below the surface, things that are not equally being announced at the beginning of the month that is going to have full announcements, full rollouts, full impacts more towards the end of the month. So what you will find out is that some of the big stuff at the end of the month was, again, something that had been cooking for a while. Some of you are going to accept and start certain things, and there will be a process behind them that will have, again, full rollout more towards the middle and the end of the month. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. There's just a process to everything. And a lot of people are going to have certain situations where we have one focus accepting an action that will completely roll out at a later date. There's a series of energies, and each one in the first 2 weeks of the month give glimpses to that middle and end. We don't just magically come up with something, be like, oh, yep, everything's going to happen in one day. It doesn't ever happen that way. Very seldom does everything have the ability to roll out in one day. Most things take steps. Most things take negotiation. Most things take a process before they are fully committed to. And after commitments are completely signed, filed, sealed, delivered, that's when we do announcements. Because if you do them too soon, usually something comes back to bite you. However, whatever we're committing to in some way, shape, or form, this month we will come back to by the end of the year. Mark my words. Okay. Oh, that sounds really heavy. I don't know how heavy it is for everybody. I think everybody's in different places, but it is what it is. We're going to start off, of course, at the beginning of the month. And what are we dealing with right at the beginning of April? We are dealing with, I have not changed something, so I know this is not going to go out the way that I want to. Oh, well. We are dealing with the full moon in Libra. Now, the full moon in Libra is actually going to be perfecting at about 9:12 p.m. I'm not really wanting to mess with this by hour right now, but I wanted to bring up the fact that this full moon in Libra is ruled by Venus. And right at the very tail end of March, Venus went into Taurus. Venus went into her home sign. And she's picking up on energies that she was focusing on, working through, trying to put together again last year. Now, why am I specifically saying with Venus, it's a repeat, where with other planets, I'm not? Because of the condition of Venus. Venus had her retrograde last year between Aries and Pisces. She has not had a retrograde since then. So whenever she's coming back around, she's now retraced areas that go back to last spring, and now is starting to touch areas of the sky where she was at last summer. But she has not had a retrograde in between those two vibrations. She will go retrograde fourth quarter of this year. She is going to be one of the tests, but now she's coming back into some things where she's already had an impact, but that impact didn't get to see certain things through. Now, it's not just because of Venus that they didn't get to see some things through, but her entry into Taurus picks back up on vibrations that specifically link to last summer. She's one of many reasons why I'm saying that. But considering she's going to be the big test element whenever it comes to fourth quarter, we're paying attention to what she's doing because of how it's going to roll out. Now, her entry brought a lot of things to the surface, and the fact that her entry coincides with a full moon in a Venus ruled sign, the full moon in Libra. This tells me her arrival during the cardinal full moon, because Libra is a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are the start of new seasons. Therefore, I call them instigative signs. Something is meant to arrive and start right in the very beginning of the month, but it's meant to be comfortable. Venus is in her own home sign. And as we progress through this month, she will not be the only planet in her own home sign because Mars is about to go into Aries. So we have a lot of forward momentum this month, no retrogrades, and planets either being in their exaltation, Pluto in Aquarius, Jupiter in Cancer, Uranus going into Gemini is a very strong energy, as well as two planets moving into their own home signs, Mars going into Aries and Venus right now in Taurus. There's a lot of centering kinds of vibration, and they really get activated in this full moon because, again, it's a peak, it's a gateway, it's certain things opening up, it's an arrival, it's a start for a lot of people. So just be aware of that. All right. So again, full moon in Libra. Now, over the course of the overnight hours from the 1st to the 2nd, Mars will have its first contra-antiscia to Saturn. I don't know why I said first. It will have a contra-antiscia to Saturn. So again, I fold the chart right here where Aries and Pisces meet up. These two planets would lay on top of each other, going into secret conjunctions. A lot of people are going to be having some conversations. They're going to have some commitments. They are going to be starting some things up in that full moon that, again, will impact later parts of the month when Mars and Saturn have an actual conjunction. So be aware that we are in a mode of accepting a lot of things at different points through the very first part of the month. On the 3rd, Mercury will have its own contra-antiscia to the sun. Not really going to get focused on that one because we have other transits to the 3rd. And that has to do with the fact that Mercury will also go through a trine with Jupiter while it's in the contra-antiscia. So again, if I fold the chart right here, Mercury is in this conjunction to the sun. There is something that is being accepted. Mercury is also making its 3rd and final trine to Jupiter, closing some things out tied to the retrograde. And most specifically, whenever it comes to elements of this weekend, this whole weekend, because this is a weekend time frame, is the moon will actually come into play and activate a part of the chart that goes back to the previous one, most specifically March 8th. There are things around that first week, again, that we have to put to bed some of the stuff that was awakened during the Mercury retrograde. And roughly around March 8th, we had the 2nd of the series of 3 Mercury-Mars conjunction with the moon in Scorpio, activating a lot of old wounds, old emotions, old feelings, and stuff like that. Once we get into this time frame around April 3rd, the moon will be back in Scorpio, making a trine to, again, Jupiter and Mercury after they have their trine. So we'll have a grand trine energy, most specific between April 3rd and April 4th of these water signs. But again, all the planets are now direct. We do not have the old wounds the same way. We do not have to keep bringing up the old stuff. And if somebody is living too deeply in the past, it is very likely that they are going to be left behind. Some of you will get cut off. You will get left behind. Some of you will be doing the cutoffs. You will not put up with the drama. You will not put up with the emotional triggers. You will want to move forward in a new vibration. And that is very, very heavy through the first few days of the month, most exact between the 3rd and the 5th. And that's a Friday through a Sunday, by the way. Now, there's more than one reason for that. Just want to bring that up. The other thing that we have going on during this time is the square between Venus and Pluto. Some people, as you're stepping into more and more of the new, some people, as you're talking about the things that you're wanting to do now, as you're pressing forward, there will be some people that are not happy with it. They are not happy with the change. And Venus as square to Pluto puts a lot of emphasis around that. So do not be surprised by any type of emotional turbulence that's going on or triggers of past insecurity. But the thing is, we are meant to leave the past insecurity behind between April 3rd, April 4th, and April 5th. Now, I didn't get too heavy on the April 5th part on the podcast for the weekly episode. I'm putting more emphasis on this next part right now, and I will put it on to next weekly episode. And this has to do with the square between the sun and Jupiter. Now, this perfects late in the afternoon going into the evening time on Sunday, April 5th. But given the fact that we're going to be so deep within other energies, this does not feel like it's going to be a star showcase compared to all the buildup to it. It feels like other things have granted acceptance. They have been left behind certain emotional turmoils, again, certain emotional frustrations. And the sun being in its exaltation, because the sun is very, very well placed in Aries, squaring Jupiter in its exaltation, this does not feel terrible, actually. This feels like something comes to light and becomes a genuine focus, but it's happening and the latter half of a Sunday that I don't know that a lot of people are going to be able to actually move with it on a Sunday evening. I feel like more people, as they go into the next week, are going to feel a shift in their confidence. They're going to feel like they're finally getting unstuck because, again, on this entire weekend, as the sun was entering its square, Jupiter finally got off the 15-degree mark where he had been since February. So it feels like once we get through the first few days of April, movement, genuine movement, really starts to take shape. And we feel like we're going to be going into a whole new week with a lot more confidence. There's more things in regards to acceptance as we go between the 5th, the 6th, the 7th. As we get into the 8th, Mars is going to go through its exact sextile to Uranus. So you can see this right here. Mars 29 degrees, 7 minutes. Here is Uranus at 29 degrees, 6 minutes. This sextile is not meant to be super heavy. Considering Uranus again is at this end degree mark of Taurus and is closing up an 8-year cycle, as well as Mars is closing up its 6-week energy through Pisces. A lot of this feels like it's rather exciting. And I feel like more people are going to be more excited about what you're going to be doing next, where we're moving from here, what's about to start, than being worried about what's being left behind. So if we're dealing with anything tied to a wrap up or ending around the 7th, the 8th, going into the 9th, that would not surprise me, but I do not feel like it's a heavy wrap up. I don't feel like it's a heavy ending. I feel like a lot more people are more excited about the steps and the actions that they are taking, that it's time to take in a lot of ways. There's a timing element here. Going into the following days. So again, Mars is going to hit a sextile to Uranus right here on the 8th, and then the next day on the 9th, going into the actual afternoon time frame. So this time I will move some stuff by hour. Boom, Mars goes in to Aries. Mars goes into its own domicile, its own home sign. And the thing is, this is not going to be like the last time Mars was in a Mars ruled sign. And again, that was last year in that October, November timeframe. More so October, like all of the month of October, Mars was in Scorpio. Mars was in that sign. But the sun was edging closer and closer to Mars because as we got into the beginning of the year, we had a Mars rebirth. Not getting too focused on the Mars rebirth. What I'm more focused on is the Mars is right now far enough away from the sun that anytime he changes signs, anytime he's doing something, his impact is far more noticeable. But we are talking about the god of war actually being in the masculine, reactive, fire version of what he rules, Aries. The heat is going to pick up, the momentum is going to pick up, the gas is going to be gassing from this point forward. Our drive, our ambition, our want to take action is going to pick up more and more and more. Therefore, our own energy levels is going to be picking up more and more after Mars goes into Aries. It's a very motivated, pushing stuff forward, let's get it all done type of energy. And it's kind of going to turn into a little bit of hot girl spring, do your stuff, go do your garden stuff, but also enjoy yourself, vibe, do the music, do the thing, it's fun. Mars goes into Aries. So exciting. Simultaneously with Mars is going into Aries, we do have another Contra-Antисcia. So again, if I was to fold the chart here at this line where Mars is, Mercury is on top of Saturn. So this feels like, again, something kind of being committed to upon the arrival of Mars. So for some people, the arrival is the bigger thing. For other people, it is a commitment that leads to an arrival or coincides with an arrival. But for some people, once certain people arrive, a new energy comes through. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess this is what we're doing now. It's like an immediate acceptance of whatever this vibration is. Because again, we now have 2 planets in their own home signs, while multiple planets are in their exaltation. The only one that's not well placed right now is Saturn, but Pluto does well in Aquarius. Uranus is about to go into Gemini, where he does super well. Mars is in its own home sign, Venus is in its home sign, the sun is in its exaltation, Jupiter's in its exaltation. That's a lot of vibration that speaks to things going right or going well, or we're just so focused on something that we're moving quickly enough because we feel enabled to get something done, to do something a certain way. And this kind of feeds into that part of the vibration. So we're going to keep this going. We're keeping it going. We're keeping it going. Again, Mars, you're in Aries now. All right. As we get into the 13th, so we're going to go jump a few days ahead. This is when our next couple of transits start to happen. And the first one actually comes like right after midnight. And one is a Contra-Antисcia. The other one is an actual transit. So I just kind of want to put them together about 12:30. So for some people, this will be the 12th. For other people, this is all going to be on the 13th. It's just going to be more in the morning time. So first things first, Mercury and Neptune will hit a Contra-Antисcia while Mars is hitting this conjunction to Neptune. And I don't really know how I feel about this because Mars is the stronger of these two planets right now. Mars is in his own home sign, Mars being the god of war. Neptune, though, has a lot of energy towards fueling beliefs. But with Mercury going into the Contra-Antисcia while this part is happening, this feels like somebody feels very fueled to act or react. Now, this can be in a positive sense of act or reaction of like, heck yeah, I want to go to that roller coaster. I want to go to that amusement park. I want to go do that thing that I ain't done in a long time. And again, action kind of ensuing. It's like somebody has some bright idea that we hadn't planned before and immediately it's accepted. That's one way it can kind of come through. But in another way, we hear about something that we did not know that was going to happen. And then as soon as it's happening, we have no other choice but to accept that as the reality. But it comes with confusion because it's Neptune. For some people, it's a manifestation in the sense of like a belief, a reaction around a belief, a fueling in certain religious aspects, a manifestation, desires in certain ways. This is a heavy sexual desire energy too. I don't normally go into stuff like that, but I am picking up on that. But it feels like it's not even a planned kind of desire. It's more along the lines of like talking to somebody and be like, so we gonna do this or what? And be like, yeah, let's go. Like there's no planning behind it, but it can be very fueled. And the fueling has an immediate acceptance of some sort, which is an odd thing to say. And I can see it going through a couple of different ways. It's kind of toxic if we're going in the negative sense. And it can go into the lies, the fraud, the deception. So it makes me very, very nervous for a lot of people because the last 15 or so years, if we've had a Mars-Neptune conjunction, Neptune's been the stronger planet because it was in Pisces. Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces. This is our first one in Aries, and Neptune is not as strong. Mars is the stronger planet. So we don't have a strong gauge to kind of go backwards and take a look at to see how it's going to manifest based off of a Mars ruled sign. Because the last time Neptune was in a Mars ruled sign was the last time Neptune was in Scorpio, and that's going back into like the 60s. That's going really far back. I could do some history. I probably will do some history stuff, but just to kind of see what was going on before. But this doesn't necessarily have an easy gauge to fall back on because, again, it is the first one. And it's going to kind of set the mood and set the stage for every Mars-Neptune conjunction that we're going to have for the next decade. So I don't know how I feel about this one quite yet. It's kind of like that Sun-Saturn. Like, I feel like some people it's going to go well, but other people, I don't really know how it's going to go. This is one of those things that the god of war, that reactive energy, is the more dominant this time. And it's like whatever we're reacting to here has to have some kind of immediate acceptance because of the other part of what's going on with that Contra-Antисcia. Now, again, this is happening real late on the 12th, right after midnight going into the 13th. So the human effect is for some people, this is going to be late on the 12th. For other people, this is going to be more about the 13th. And we do have another transit going on the 13th in those overnight hours, which is not meant to be heavy. And I think it's really interesting because of how it unfolds. So I've got this now at 3:30, still on the 13th. Jupiter is going to hit this sextile to, Venus, 16 degrees, 48 minutes, is hitting a sextile to Jupiter, 16 degrees, 47. I was about to say them backwards. Sorry. Venus is here in Taurus, hitting the sextile to Jupiter. And then right after this, the moon is going to go into Jupiter's sign. So this feels either like it's something that's completely blinding our senses, that takes us into some kind of new emotion that we did not see coming. Again, something, some kind of meeting of sorts, some type of action of sorts that as soon as it's connected to, it's like, are we doing this or what? Like, and we flood into this sense. Now, Venus's sextile to Jupiter does kind of give some lightening to the situation, but I don't know how heavy the initial situation is. That's what I don't have a gauge on, because I feel like for a lot of people, it's going to be something completely different. And we do not have a precursor to kind of judge it. But it also sets the stage again for how multiple conjunctions of Neptune and Mars are going to go for the next decade plus. So be aware when we get towards this time frame, this 13th time frame, that we are not going to see things clearly, no matter what. But I feel like the first one, we react to something wearing a different hat of sorts, wearing different glasses. It can be fueled and motivating in some ways, but it could also just be, I want to do something that's completely fun. And as soon as somebody says, let's go to the Renaissance Fair, let's go to the amusement park, let's go to do this, like, that's all we want to do, is something that completely submerges our senses. And there's no thought process to it all. It's like immediate, like, yeah, let's go in the car right now. Okay. Okay. All right. On the 14th, bump this by a day, Mercury, 28 degrees, 15 more minutes, is going to hit a sextile to Uranus. Now, this is going to happen more in the daytime hours, so closer to around noon. We got a couple things that are going to be happening during this date. So, first off, Mercury hits the sextile to Uranus. That's not heavy. Mercury is the ruler of our logical brain, communication, travel, anything tied to Mercury. If it's tied to your body, it's anything in duality, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 limbs. This feels like some kind of communication that is met with some kind of excitement. Now, I'm more likely to believe this one is about the future planning of an arrival, because on the 14th, so I'm just keep bumping this by hour, Mercury goes from its sextile to Uranus to actually going into Aries. So it completely arrives in Aries at 10:22 p.m. Now, I do feel like there is still foreshadowing with the Mercury Uranus sextile, because what is Uranus about to do? It's about 10 days, 10, 12 days away, so less than 2 weeks, from entering Mercury sign, where Uranus will be for the next 8 years, because we're wrapping up one 8-year cycle around Uranus while going into another. We have a lot of things that are blurring and shifting all through this time frame of April, by the way. So it's a lot. So for some people, there will be news and plans and hopes around like what we're about to start. There's still going to be some lingering little bits of like something's about to wrap up, or we're in the process of wrapping something up, but we're not all in a wrap up period. Some of us are just getting very, very anxious about what new things are coming through, and we're expecting more of the new. So some people will be in closeout mode around this Uranus Mercury transit. If it's closeout, it is not heavy. It's actually more of an exciting thing, but more people can be getting news or communicating about something that is about to begin, more so than things that are coming to a close. So just be aware of that. Mercury goes into Aries. Now, one of the things about Mercury and Aries that I like to call this is anytime Mercury is in Aries, I call it pop-off season. And that's going to make the next few weeks really, really interesting now that Mercury is in Aries, because the things that people try not to say are going to go through the filter. In fact, I would argue the filter gets broken very, very quickly. It's pop-off season. If you know anybody that their Mercury is in a fire sign, when they want to say something, they say it. There's no filter on their opinion. They don't care if they're going to hurt your feelings. And a lot of people are not going to care all of a sudden if they're hurting feelings or not. once Mercury goes into Aries. But I do feel like the first few days of Mercury in Aries are going to feel so relieving because we've dealt with Mercury in Pisces for well over 2 months by this point. So again, there's something hopeful, there's something uplifting, there's something exciting whenever it comes to the new that's coming through, the new that is rolling out. Does this feel like an arrival per se with Mercury going into not Uranus, with Mercury going into Aries? Not really, but it does feel like an uptick and an uplift in our mental energy. And do not be surprised if for the next week, from the 14th to the 20th, if it's a lot harder to sleep because of how much energy is in the fire signs by this point. So sleepless nights whenever we get to this 14th time frame. Mercury is now in Aries, and it picks up from here very, very quickly. Now, on the 16th, the sun is going to hit a conjunction to Chirons. We have a couple things that start to unroll between the 16th and the 17th. Now, the conjunction to Chiron is going to happen in the morning time. Now I am doing everything by hours. So roughly around 10:15 a.m., that is when the sun will hit its exact conjunction to Chiron. This is putting forth somewhere between the 15th, the 16th, and the 17th, a showcasing around a wound, enlightening someone to a wound, discovering a wound, and or creating a new wound. This can be a creation of a new wound. Now, I specifically say that because on the 17th, we'll actually go into a new moon in Aries, conjunct this Chiron. It can be the awareness and the discovery of a new wound that can impact the long term for some people. I don't know that it's going to be an impact for everyone that way. I feel like a lot more people are going to be, again, focused on the new ground and the potential of new solutions and our new direction. So be aware whenever it comes to this Sun Chiron conjunction, if it is bringing enlightenment around a wound of sorts, it's almost going to be for the final time. And I got reasons why I'm saying that. Mainly that this is going to be the very, very last time the sun will hit a conjunction to Chiron in Aries. The next time these two have a conjunction in 2027, it's going to be in Taurus. It's going to be in a whole different sign. We are actually wrapping up Chiron in Aries between 2026 and 2027. So if we are enlightening something around a wound, then it is very much likely going to be something tied to a last time of sorts. So that means if something comes up about a wound, we're going to be looking at the solution so we can finally work through something and not have something drag on anymore. Because again, new normal, new vibrations, new frustrations, new direction, new path, new everything. Whenever it comes to the idea of creating a new wound, that's a little bit harder because that means it's possibly going to be a long-term wound that's going to impact someone for a very long period of time. And that I'm more likely to believe is going to happen with younger people more so than the adults. Because again, it's going to be the last Sun Chiron in Aries, and a lot of Aries vibration can be associated with children. So just be aware of that. If we're looking or discovering something around a wound, it could be a new long-term wound that is going to impact people for a very, very long time. If you are older, this is finding the solution so we can finally overcome a wound and so it can no longer impact us moving forward. So be aware, especially those of you that have children, if there's stuff going on with different family members or something like that around this time frame, the 15th, 16th, and 17th, if your kids are being hurt in some way, and I mean like emotionally hurt, like dad doesn't show up anymore to pick them up, then this is probably going to be something that sets a tone for them for a very long time. If you know going into it that that's going to be the case, then maybe there's counter spaces that you can do to kind of help balance it out, or it can at least just help you prepare to have to do the balancing act. Okay. Again, we're still in the 16th. The sun is going to hit this conjunction to Chiron. This is going to be the most exact around 10:15 a.m. As the day progresses, Pluto, 5 degrees, 24 minutes. I'm just not moving the screen right now, is going to hit a sextile to Mars. You can see this right here. Mars is at 5 degrees, 18 minutes. So we have this sextile of Pluto and Mars Pluto's very well placed in Aquarius. Mars is in its own home sign. This can be something in the environment that we are feeling a lot more settled into, or we're looking at all of how the steps we take to keep a change in our environment going forward. Some people can be rattled by this, but this actually feels more like drive, determination, and getting more things motivated and moving forward than it is the triggering vibration. If we're having the triggers, I feel like that's more tied to the sun and Chiron, where Pluto and Mars is more kind of going into the environmental things. Now, as we're going to keep this going, as we get into the actual evening time, and this is why I wanted to go ahead and do this part by hour, is right around 9 p.m. So I'm putting this at 9:30. Mercury is going to hit its first conjunction to Neptune. Some of what we're talking about, some of what we're planning can either be something, again, in the woo-woo sense, in the manifestation sense, in the mythological sense, in the separation from reality type of sense. It's just not as an action oriented as what the Mars Neptune was a few days earlier. This feels more conversational, and we can be talking about the past, a nostalgia type of vibe. But it's like, if we're still talking about the past, it's still playing into part of the new. It's like, whenever I was a kid, this is how my grandpa used to do it. But we can't do it that way anymore because we don't live in the same era. We don't have the same tools, or we have different tools now that would make this a lot easier if we do it XYZ 1, 2, 3 kind of way. So it's like we have the hint of nostalgia to there as an influence to what we're starting to do, but we're also doing it with new tools, so we don't have to do it the same way Grandpa did. Grandpa had to do everything by hand because he didn't have a tractor, but now we have tractors, like that type of thing. There's a hint of nostalgia and talking about how something was done in the past, while also very, very aware of how we will do something more moving forward. This one does not feel nearly as heavy as some of the prior conjunctions with Neptune. And I do feel like, since this is the last one that we're going to have with Neptune for a while, this does not have near as much confusion or reaction to it. But we can be committing to certain things that we just do not see clearly. And that can be a problem, considering we're getting really close to that Mercury-Mars conjunction, because that's exact between the 19th and the 20th time frame. So again, we could be committing to some things that are going to have a very heavy influence throughout the rest of the year. But it's like we committed to something not knowing all the terms and conditions, but we're in the process of committing anyways. That can be a problem later on. Just FYI. Okay. Going into the 17th, this is going to be more exact in the morning time. This is why I wanted to keep doing this part by hour. Roughly around 6:51 a.m. So I got this now at 6:30. Here is our new moon in Aries. This new moon is in a conjunction to Chiron. So we still have this element around either finding a solution to finally overcome an area that has been a wound, or it is the full cementing of that new long-term wound that might take a long years, decades type of time to overcome, depending on how this is working for you. But if this is more the solution orientation of how we're moving forward from here, we could actually still be in this process of committing to certain things in solutions that have a big impact throughout the rest of the year. A lot of this Aries time frame is putting a big impact towards more and more of the year. Okay. On the 18th, so I'm just going to bump this by day. Pluto, 5 degrees, 25 minutes, is going to hit a sextile to Mercury. Mercury's at 4 right now, but it's going to go exact a little bit closer to, where's that at? The afternoon, so roughly around 3:30 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But it can still have that environmental issue. There can be, I say issue loosely, it doesn't have to be issue, but that environmental feel, like stuff that's going on in our surroundings. We can feel the shift in the power dynamic. We are aware of shifts in the power dynamic, and this can kind of feed into parts of that. But there can also be a boiling point of contention, depending on how the next things are going to go. Because if you look here, Mars and Saturn are getting really close to each other. And this is going to have a big imprint of volatility to it, because their actual conjunction is going to happen on the 19th. Now, it's going to be exact more in the evening time, roughly around 5:31 p.m. Central Standard Time. I've still got it here at sunrise at 6:30. But what's interesting to me about Mars and Saturn's conjunction is the fact that this also coincides with the sun changing signs. So Mars and Saturn are going to go exact roughly around 5:31 p.m. And then just a few hours later, by 9 p.m., I'm rounding up to 9, the sun will go into Taurus. So we have the god of war, Mars, in his own home sign, coming into a conjunction with Saturn, rules, roles, responsibility, bosses, CEO, elders, and they're not well placed this time. The boss, the CEO, the elders, whatever we're doing in certain roles and responsibility, if people in positions of power that have not been doing right by power get to this time frame, they're probably not going to like it. They're not going to like the judgment. They're not going to like the actions or the reactions. They are not going to like the frustration. They are not going to like the tension. Some people in positions of power, and I can say this in the collective, some of you, it's going to be with your bosses, with your elders, that type of thing. Some people in positions of power are going to have to make some very harsh reactive judgments that once they come to light, sun going into Taurus, sun going into a new sign, they can either spark energies that start to feel solid, or whatever is coming into focus, we all become very, very aware that this is going to have a very long-term impact, because again, the sun is going to go into Taurus, which is a fixed earth sign. Even though Taurus season is only going to last a few weeks, it's still fixed long-term vibration. And we have something new, something reactive, something that is getting decided upon, some type of judgment, some type of frustration, some type of heavy thing in the collective, explosive thing in the collective, do with that part what you will, that has layers of impact, because Mars's conjunction to Saturn is also about to include Mercury. And this is the thing that I've been talking about before. Like, this is the thing that I've been saying, like, hey, we have very big energy that's going to take us from October of last year, that's going to impact us in April. And whatever that impact is going to have big impacts going into the future. This is now the honing in Zion of vibration, energy, restlessness, not being able to sleep well, not being able to turn our blood pressure down type of vibration. It's going to be very activated. We are all going to feel very, very elevated. And there are going to be fights and tension around this time frame in the more mundane sense. Now, can there be fights in the collective? There are already fights in the collective. Let's not even go down that route. Just be aware that this time frame is heavily impacted. Now, on the next day, on the 20th, Mercury will hit its conjunction to Saturn. And you can see that's basically exact right here. The thing about this part of the conjunction, this triple conjunction between Saturn, Mercury, and Mars that's developing right here, is literally right at this minute, 7 degrees, 55 minutes. This is where Saturn is going to be when he ends his retrograde. And that's not going to happen until December. Again, fourth quarter. There's stuff about this time frame in April that we will directly be coming back to at the end of the year. And we will be dealing with the next round, the next layer. We'll be starting something over again, because whatever happened here did not go well. This is a very pivotal vibration in the mundane sense, so in your daily life, and in the collective. So everybody, this vibration right here, it's got so much to it. So Mercury will hit its conjunction to Saturn, and then a couple hours later, of course, Mercury will hit its actual conjunction to Mars. That's close enough. That's fine. So here's Saturn, here's Mercury, here's Mars. Very big triple conjunction. Mercury, being no filter, has no filter left, communicating certain things, being told certain judgments, being told certain policies, being told certain rules, delivering more, going into areas of contention, potentially fighting. On this particular day, the moon is even in Gemini. So it's in Mercury sign. So whatever Gemini rules for you is even playing a part into this. So if this is financial energy for some of you, if this is just plans and reactions, if there is going to be, tensions, fighting, that type of thing, this is a frustrating, infuriating, fueling, filterless, all gas, no brake time frame. I cannot express that one enough. It will make more sense when we get to it. And again, this Mercury-Mars conjunction is the 5th one. It's closing out a series of 5 that started back in October. And simultaneously, we're getting closer to the Venus-Uranus conjunction. And ironically enough, that's the next thing we're going to focus on. So let's leave Mercury-Mars alone. I'll talk more about it whenever we get to the weekly time frame. Let's get to the 23rd. And let's get to later in the day. Okay. And here we go, April 23rd. Now, this is going to go the most exact, roughly around 9 p.m. But what we're going to have is Venus conjunct Uranus at 29 degrees, 53 minutes. When these two had their conjunction last year, July 4th, it was the morning of July 4th. So I just kind of, whenever I'm talking to people in their individual sessions, I keep saying, like, July 4th weekend. What happened July 4th weekend? And the thing is, a lot of people have blanked it out. They're like, I don't remember. What happened on July 4th weekend? I don't remember what happened on July 4th weekend. What was going on? Now, some of you know exactly what happened. There's a lot more of you. You have no clue. But we did this transit once before. July 4th weekend in the morning time, so somewhere between like sunrise and noon. I'm just rounding it to that. We had a conjunction between Venus and Uranus at 29 degrees, 52 minutes. This conjunction is happening at 29 degrees, 53 minutes. It's the exact same place. This has happened before, this conjunction. Now, again, Venus is now over areas of the sky where she's been once before with no retrograde to interfere. So she is retracing some steps that she's already been in, and she's pushing some things forward. This has happened once before, and then both planets went into Gemini. Venus will actually go into Gemini before midnight. So she's hours away from going into Gemini. Uranus will follow her a couple days later, just like before. The difference is going to be last year was a glimpse. It was a pinky toe dip. Again, what were we focused on last summer? What ideas did we have? What things did we start to envision for ourselves? What direction did we start to put together? And we try to push it forward. And for one reason or another, something just wasn't working. What were we trying to push into place before? Because it's very, very likely that the next round, the next layer, the bigger part of what we were trying to put together last summer, or we thought was a great idea last summer, can come together in a whole different way right here. And it really sets the mood and the stage for what we're plunging into and moving forward with all throughout the rest of the year. Because again, Uranus, once he goes into Gemini, which is just a few days later, sets a tone, an arrival for a new 8-year cycle around what Uranus is doing. He's closing out his trips in Taurus. And for a lot of people, this is going to be a meeting. This is going to be a last something of sorts. This is going to be a commitment of something coming to a close or happening for the last time. For other people, it's going to be like one final nail in the coffin type of thing, one final signature. And we move forward, we charge ahead, we do something different. There's a shift in the power dynamic. Venus's conjunction to Uranus, again, it is the most exact around 9 p.m. A couple hours later, she's going to go into Gemini. So I got this now at 11:30. Venus arrives into Gemini. On the 25th, the sun is going to go through its exact square to Pluto. So you can kind of see this part right here. Now, this is going to be more exact in the morning time. And whenever the sun hits its square to Pluto, right afterwards, Uranus comes into Gemini. So there's a shift in the power dynamic. And I'll put more emphasis on this whenever we do the weekly episode. But if you pay attention, all right, so I know it's still April 23rd. I backed up, April 23rd, 11:30 p.m. The moon will hit this square to the sun and this opposition to Pluto while this square is building. And this coincides with the arrival of Venus. 2 days later, whenever Uranus arrives, we do have the full square between the sun and Pluto. So these few days, April 23rd through the 25th, are directly connected. There's a series of things that are unfolding that are coming into focus. And again, a lot of this we have had foreshadowing to. What were you thinking of last summer? What were you doing? What were you trying to put together? Where were you vibing? Where were you focusing? Because in some way, shape, or form, we're picking back up on it, but we can do it with both hands and running. It's not pinky toe dips. We can cannonball. Like, be aware of that. That's actually a really helpful thing. All right, I'm going to keep this going. On the 26th, Venus is going to have her sextile from Neptune. Now, this is more in the daytime, roughly around lunchtime area. So what we're going to have is Neptune, 3 degrees, 8 minutes, goes in through this sextile with Neptune. You can kind of see that right here. After their sextile, we're also going to have a square between Mercury and Jupiter. And considering where we're at now in the month, Mercury is the ruler of Virgo. The moon's actually in Virgo, but what I was focused on was the nodes, is that the nodes have now started to really deeply move. So right after Jupiter got unstuck, so too did the nodes. I didn't put a whole lot of focus on that earlier, but that did happen. So we are still in more forward momentum, and this is kind of speaking to that. Mercury square to Jupiter can have an interaction that ties back to the eclipse energy for some people, but for other people, it's going to be a decision, a plan, a communication that is being impressed upon multiple people, because Mercury is now hosting a new Venus and a new Uranus in his sign. And some of the unexpected or exciting news is going to have to be addressed. It's going to get announced. It's going to have a bigger effect onto multiple people. There will be direction that gets addressed and delivered in so many different ways. And then in the morning time, going into the 27th, so I'm going to bump this now by hour, we get our final transit of the month, final major transit. And that has to do with the fact that, I'm a day off. What am I doing? I'm a day off. On the 28th, Pluto will go through its exact trine to Venus. You can see this here, 11:30 a.m., April 28th. Here's Pluto, 5 degrees, 29 minutes. And here's Venus, 5 degrees, 29 minutes. This will be the last major transit to Pluto before Pluto turns retrograde. But Pluto's not turning retrograde until May. So we're right at the tail end of certain energies where some of the things that are starting to unfold and unwind are either helping people settle down their qualms and fears, or because so much new has come through, it starts to create a shock wave in parts of May, where certain people's like, oh, well, if that's the way you're going to do it, I don't want to help anymore. I don't want to do that part anymore. Are we getting that directly at this end part of April? No. I feel like whenever we get through this trine between Uranus and Venus right here, and again, this will be the second one, technically speaking, in a Venus part of the transit, there still can be things that tie back to last summer, but it's like we're wavering something to understand the dynamics of what's changing in the environment and how we're going to be overcoming or dealing with certain power struggles from the past moving forward. Because if so much new is happening, there's going to be some people that are resistant to change. That's going to happen regardless. That's okay if we have that energy that speaks to resistance of change. There's going to be so much energy that unfolds in that middle second half going into the end of the month, between the conjunctions to Neptune, the conjunctions to Saturn, Mercury, Mars just by themselves, that new moon in Aries, the square between Sun and Pluto, the arrival of Uranus and Venus going into Gemini. There's going to be so many things that kind of come through. It would make sense that by the time we get to the end of the month, there's just some people that they're like, There's just been a lot of change, and I don't know how I feel about it. And you're going to start to see like little shock waves in people, but I don't know that we hit the full element of people pulling back. But I do think you will see hesitancy because, again, so much is coming through. And hesitancy can also be resilience, it can also be stubbornness. But there is something that kind of feels like a hesitancy of like, okay, I can't deal with another thing. I'm so happy for you because it's a trine between Venus and Pluto. I'm so happy for you and all the news. And yeah, but parts of me is like, I don't know about all this. I don't know. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I feel like it's been a little bit much, and that's fair. By the time we get to the end of the month, there's going to be some people that's kind of putting their hands in the air, like, I can't do another change. I can't do another one. It is what it is. And we've all been there before. The first part of April, there are little things coming together, little clicks in the energy, arrivals of certain things, packages getting delivered, putting some stuff together, but not necessarily, putting everything in it. It's just more along the lines of like, I've got the frame, I've got the framework, I've got the instructions, I've got some of it. I've purchased, but I'm waiting on transit. But once we get into that middle time frame, most specifically after Mercury goes into Aries, that's when the pace really starts to pick up. And there will be so many things that can occur over the course of a 2-week period that it will feel like a whole different vibration, but it won't be, because in a lot of ways, we were setting the mood and setting the stage and setting the commitments in a lot of ways in the first part of the month. Now, that first little week, we've got to overcome some of the past energies. We're letting go of some old wounds, purging a couple quick little remaining things, because again, we have two things unfolding simultaneously. And I had said that back in March, and that was we have the old emotions and wounds that we need to work through, while also realizing that once we work through them, that they will no longer hold us back for the things that we're really going to dive into, delve into, put our hands into. And as we get through April, your hands are going to be deeper and deeper and deeper into the dirt, into the mud, into the concrete, into the mess, into whatever you're messing with. It's a fast, dynamic, charge ahead month. Planets that had been stuck in areas of the sky will not be stuck. So I'm talking about Jupiter mainly, and the nodes. The nodes aren't planets, they're luminaries, but they're going to still also get unstuck. Mercury will finally leave Pisces, where he has been since roughly around February 8th. Once he leaves, it's a lot more faster energy. It gets moving. And where you have felt stuck, or felt like you have been waiting, or felt like things are just not going fast enough, I'm telling you, it's going to pick up speed to the point that we're not even going to see everything clearly. And that's going to be the problem. So much will unfold so quickly, and we'll have to become reactive, that some of the things that we will agree to, because it feels the most logical in the moment, will be the things that we end up coming back to later going, man, I shouldn't have agreed to that. Or I shouldn't have agreed to that with that one person about that one thing, because in some way, shape, or form, whatever we're agreeing to most exact around the 19th and the 20th, we will come back to it in some way by the end of the year, most exactly November, December timeframe. Be aware of that. We don't get to just run full force into the nethers for the rest of all the days. No. There's a key point of this vibration that sets so much of what we start to move with and deal with for the next 2 years. And it's based off of the energy that we're in this month, in April. It's a big month. And I can't even see all of the stuff that unfolds past it until we get through some of these transits. So April's a big month. Be aware of that. Understand what you're working with, and understand that we're moving into some very fast-paced, reactive, charge ahead, the past is going to be left behind type of vibration moving forward this month. So do with that what you will. I love and appreciate every single one of you. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.